All right, cool. We're going to get started in a couple of minutes. Maybe we can do a quick mic check as well for the presenters. So Monica, Carlos, Stephen, Paul, and Nick.
Hi, Daniel.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
yeah, can hear you well. Monica, your mic's working as well. Yeah, we tested it earlier, so it should be fine.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Stephen here.
Stephen, we can hear you well. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And I think the sharing.
Good evening. I think mine was working fine earlier.
Yeah, Paul works well. All good. How about you, Monica? Can we do a quick check as well? Cool, awesome. Right, yeah, we're gonna get started in a couple of minutes. I said that before already. We've got a bit of a thunderstorm coming over Melbourne right now. So if suddenly a speaker disappears, may mean that they lost power. So let's hope for the best for the next hour and a half. But I think we should be fine. It's clearing up now. The sun's coming out again, so the typical Melbourne weather that we have right here. Let's start in about 2 minutes. We've got a really good agenda today, and let's wait for a couple of more attendees to join. All right, cool. Let's get started. Welcome everyone to the last Melbourne meetup for the year. We had, at the beginning of this year, we really had the ambitious plan to have at least one meetup in person. Didn't really work. We had 4 virtual ones, but we hope for next year that's going to work out, and finally we'll do an in-person meetup as well. But that's the last one for the year, and let's get started. So we'll have, as usual, a Kahoot later. If you want to chat with us, pretty much just put it in the chat function. So there on the right-hand side, there is, on the right upper side rather, there's 2 symbols, a chat function and an attendees function. So if you open it up in the chat, you can essentially do Q&A, make a few comments, etc. And then we'll use Kahoot for trivia later in the meetup. For those of you who haven't been to any of our meetups, I'll recommend to download the Kahoot app on your phone, on your mobile phone. Then you can essentially play it from there while you're seeing the screen. These are your local meetup leaders. We've got Adam, a lead solution engineer from MuleSoft, based in Melbourne. We've got Carlos, a partner engineer from MuleSoft, also based in Melbourne, and myself, a strategic technical architect in the CS team, also based in Melbourne. And we have the pleasure of hosting you this evening. Yeah, for those of you who haven't introduced yourself, please go to the chat function and let us know where you're from. So we do have people from Pakistan today. Osama, welcome. That's fantastic. I don't think we've had anyone from that part of the world yet, so that's amazing. People from India, Melbourne, a few familiar faces here. So just introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're from. It's always good to see, some people from New Zealand. A few meetups ago, we had people from the Ukraine and Russia. That was quite amazing. So I'll give you a few updates, and then in about 10 minutes, I will hand over to the Capgemini team. They will talk about Supercharge event integration with the Async API standard. Presentation and a demo, super interesting and very relevant topic as well. A lot of our customers, a lot of MuleSoft customers are talking about that specific standard and how to implement it in their projects. And then I'll hand over to another MuleSoft partner, to Copado, and they will do a show and tell about how you can take control of your MuleSoft, Salesforce, and multi-cloud deployment pipelines with Copado DevOps. That's going to be another half hour. So hopefully we'll be done with that by about 6:40. And then as usual, we have a Kahoot game with prizes. I'll talk about that a little bit later, what that is. A few announcements, a few topics that we wanted to call out. First of all, on the 9th of December, so that's exactly a week from today, we have a conference running virtually, of course. It's called MuleSoft Transform. And that's super interesting because we'll be talking about new product announcements. We're rolling out a couple of really interesting new products early next year. And MuleSoft Transform will talk about what these products are. So we would really recommend for you to sign up for that. It's only an hour and a half. So from 1 p.m., no, it's actually 2.5 hours, from 1 p.m. to 3:30 Australian Eastern Time. I will share the link in a minute in the chat as well, so you can sign up for that. You hear about new products and you can speak to the experts virtually. Multi-factor authentication. That's something that MuleSoft, from the 1st of February next year on, this will actually be mandatory. So have a look at it. It's easy to enable for yourself, for your users. If you have a large user group, makes sense to think about how to do that at scale. So I'll share a link about MFA as well in a minute. Another new product feature that we rolled out, you can now use multiple IDPs for SSO, right? So that way you can manage secure access to the Anypoint platform using multiple identity providers and single sign-on capabilities. We've seen a lot of our customers have more than one of these IDPs. So that is now available that you can, depending on your team, activate a number of IDPs for a single sign-on. So that's available now. Have a look at the documentation and how to enable it. Pretty straightforward. There's a few webinars that I want to call out as well. So the first one is pretty much aligned with MuleSoft Transform. If you are a MuleSoft partner or customer, then you should get an invite to our quarterly product roadmap webinar. So we do that on a quarterly basis. It's a public webinar. This quarter, it runs on the 15th of December. So it's about in almost 2 weeks. And again, we will be talking about what's on the roadmap for the next 3 to 6 months. And as you can see here, there's some really interesting things coming up around API management, MuleSoft Composer, new features in Anypoint monitoring, Runtime Fabric, what's happening there, new accelerators, especially for financial services and for SAP. That's good. And also, if you're using Partner Manager as well, there's some new capabilities that we will roll out over the next 3 to 6 months. So make sure you sign up and watch that webinar. The second one is an on-demand webinar. So that ran back in November. It's about establishing a Center for Enablement strategy in your organization. Super interesting topic. We always talk about technology at MuleSoft and the platform and connectors, but very often it is also about organizational change, right? And really thinking about how does a partner, how does a customer really manage their organization in a way that they can get the most out of a platform. And our concept is called Center for Enablement. And I'll share that link as well to this on-demand webinar. I think it's about an hour or hour and a half where 2 consultants from the customer success team, from our global customer success team, are presenting about how to establish such a Center for Enablement. Right, and that's something new as well. So as you may know, we record these meetups and we put them now on YouTube as well. So we've got our own YouTube channel and we put all of the meetups so far in 2021, 3 so far, onto this meetup channel. I'll share the link, and the meetup that you're watching right now will land on that channel as well. So if there was a topic that was of specific interest to you, maybe you thought, hey, I've got a team in my organization that would really love to see that, please share the link. Yeah, it's for public consumption. We also have our online meetup group. That's sort of a recurring theme. These are weekly sessions that we're running on a variety of topics that we keep up to date. So if you sign up under meetups.mulesoft.com for those online meetup groups, you should get a couple of emails once in a while about new topics. And Friends of Max. I mean, that list is growing every week. There's new small videos about specific technologies around our MuleSoft platform. So if you really want to quickly learn something in 10 minutes or 20 minutes, I think that's about the max of time, then really have a look at those Friends of Max videos on YouTube. There's constantly new topics that come up pretty much on a weekly basis. So for you to quickly learn something about it. Right, what's next? So if you like the meetups, please share them with your colleagues who may also be interested in our platform and who want to learn. Invite your network to join. As always, it's all about NPS as well. You'll get a survey at the end. Please take some time to fill it out. Just a few questions. That would be good. And if you are working with our platform and you would like to present at one of our meetups, please feel free to reach out to myself, Adam, Carlos, or the meetups.mulesoft@mulesoft.com, and then we can definitely arrange something. And the next Melbourne meetup, we plan it for March next year. And I say this every time. I hope it's in person. You never know what happens. But the next opportunity we have to get an in-person meetup, we'll definitely do that. All right, that's all from me. I will now hand over to the Capgemini team to talk about event integration using the Async API standard.
Thank you, Daniel. Please let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, it's coming up. Thanks, Carlos.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, hi, everybody, and thank you, Daniel. As mentioned, my name is Carlos. I am a partner engineer. I am based in Australia, and I am very happy because today I am sharing this space with Monica Raja from Capgemini. As mentioned, she is going to be running a very cool demo about modern event-driven architectures, and she's going to be using Async APIs. And just before we get into that demo, I'm going to take you through a little bit of a journey on what a modern event-driven architecture is. And also, as part of this journey, I'm going to be sharing a little bit of the vision and the roadmap from a product perspective. First, let's start by talking about this concept of actionable insight. Actionable insight. And I am saying that it can be complex, but the reality is that it shouldn't be, because this is how humans work. You know, the process is very simple. Based on an action, there is some data, and if we can analyze and get insight out of that data, then we can generate yet another action, and then that action is going to continue with this infinite loop. This is how humans operate, and there are studies that show that a typical adult takes over 35,000 conscious decisions in real time every single day. So when I say that it can be complex, it's when basically I refer to IT, because you know in IT we tend to always overcomplicate things, and this just happens by default. There are obviously different mechanisms to generate that information, generate data, whether it's like legacy systems, new applications, old applications, different databases. You know, there are different protocols, different standards, whether that information is coming by human interventions or directly by systems. And the thing is that all of these things have to occur in real time. Why though? Let me explain the concept of the value of data. I borrowed this diagram from Gartner, which basically it extrapolates the value of data basically across the time that we take to analyze it. And as you can see here, if we take hours, days, or months in order to analyze data, well, that's basically when we are doing a historical analysis. And you can see there is definitely value in doing this type of analysis, but you can see that the value is going to be quite small as compared as if we had done it within minutes. Within minutes, we are talking about being reactive. And you can see that within the first minute, the value was pretty high. You know, it was at here, and very quickly it decreased as time continued. if we take seconds to take that insight from the data, from the action, so basically that's when we are talking about actionable insight. But basically, if we are able to do it in real time, in a sub-second, that's when we can go to the highest value, and that's when we can talk about being preventive and predictive around actionable insight. Okay? And the concept of event-driven architecture is really nothing new. For many decades, we have basically been designing and developing event-driven architecture. So let's talk about what makes a modern event-driven architecture. There has always been that concept of event producers and event consumers. And there's always a queue or topic where basically we generate messages or events, and basically we pull them out of that queue or topic. But I can almost guarantee that if you think of any previous experience that you have had around designing or implementing an event-driven architecture, I can almost guarantee that it was always around satisfying non-functional requirements for a particular application. For example, there was an application that basically it was so critical that messages cannot get lost. So in order to achieve message reliability, you were using a persistent queue, and you were enforcing explicit acknowledgement by the consumers to tell that I have already processed this event. You can just erase it from the queue. Otherwise, it is going to be available for someone else to process. Or because you wanted to achieve better resiliency or more a high availability, and you wanted to basically create asynchronous patterns so that you can have multiple subscribers and so on. But if you can see, it was always around non-functional requirements for one application. The difference, the big difference when we talk about modern event-driven architectures is that, well, now we are introducing this concept of the event broker. And the event broker, as you can see, it comes with different flavors. Like it can be for streaming platforms or event grids, meshes, etc. The big difference here is that we may not know what application or applications we are going to be building on day one. But we know what can produce events, and this can be pretty much anything in an enterprise. It can be applications, it can be systems, it can be human end users, mobile applications, pretty much anything. And if we can push all of this into this concept of event broker, then we are going to be able to add consumers depending on different business initiatives that we may have in the future. Let me give you a couple of examples. Let's say that this is a company in the utilities sector, and it is basically transporting electricity across suburbs and cities. And let's say that this company wants to create this digital backbone for event distribution. So they start basically pushing events from their systems and applications, from their call center, directly information about the grid, information about end user activity, and obviously information that is coming from the electricity that they are basically distributing across different geographies. Now, what application are we going to do with all of this information? Well, we might not know. I mean, obviously there are going to be ideas. Like the company might have some original idea. Like, for example, talking about being preventive and predictive around faults, for example. When there is a big fault, like a big outage in a big suburb or a number of suburbs, normally there were small signs that could have been correlated in real time to prevent that from happening. So in a modern event-driven architecture, we can make a calls for example, this. We can create a microservice and ask the event broker to give you all the events around electricity for this particular suburb, or a geography, like a latitude and longitude, so that you can cover larger or smaller geographies, and then basically give you all the faults that are happening in that particular in real time. Why? Because potentially you want to continue that and create flexible choreographies for the other systems to make actions. And it doesn't have to be end there. Probably the following week or the following month or after a couple of months, the company has an idea to capture all the information around electricity, regardless of the location. And maybe they want to push it into a data warehouse. Or maybe coming back to this concept of the end user, if we have real-time information about the grid, maybe we can give that information in real time to our end users via notifications. And if we know that the grid is at capacity and there is going to be a blackout, we can probably give customers the option, like we can tell them like from 2 to 4, if you can reduce your electricity consumption, this is going to help the grid. And if I'm an end user and I receive this notification and I happen to be from 2 to 4 doing my shopping in a shopping center, maybe I can turn off my air conditioning. And that information, again, can be retrieved in real time by using another more modern API. And then maybe I can, as a company, I can provide rewards to those consumers that help to avoid a big outage in a suburb. And who doesn't enjoy outages when it's a summer and a 40+ degree day? When many of you, I'm pretty sure, are used to the concept of API-led connectivity, where basically it has 3 layers. We start with the system API layer that basically uses the richness in connectivity to integrate into pretty much any upstream backend application. And then the process API, which is basically consuming those systems API and providing a business unit. And then obviously the experience API that is going to provide access to tailored channels. When we move into a modern event-driven architecture, well, we are going to be adding this concept of event broker at some point in between. And who is going to be generating the events for the event broker? Well, to be honest, they can come from anywhere, as I said. The systems API, the process APIs, the experience APIs can be pushing events into the event broker. But not only them, these events, as I said previously, can also be coming from external actors. And why? Well, in the same way how I can create these process APIs to generate this business unit, well, I can create now the concept of an event processor. And have a look, these are the same queries that I just mentioned before. And I can just be receiving these events in real time. And you can see how I can interact with the REST APIs as well. So, there's going to be a cohesion between asynchronous APIs and REST APIs. And potentially because I want to push into Snowflake from a data warehouse perspective, which is what Monica is going to demonstrate. So just to finish, an asynchronous API to us is basically as a REST API. It doesn't have, basically, it provides the same speed and agility for businesses. So right now, we do support Async API spec. And the same way as you can design and publish to Exchange and REST API, you can do Async APIs. And what we are going to be doing in the future, which is basically not that far away, it's next year, the ability to treat event brokers as first-class citizens so that we can also manage them, adding policies, etc. And with this introduction, I'm going to pass it on to Monica to take us through this demonstration.
Thanks, Carlos. Thank you, everyone, for taking your time to attend this event. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep, we can see that.
So till now, Carlos has explained the significance and the benefits of event-driven architecture. So now I would like to discuss how this EDA framework can assist energy or utility companies to improve their operational efficiency and lower its cost. So most of the retailers and customers, they are always interested in knowing how much energy they are consuming daily and how much it costs. So in order to do this, they are using omni-channel, where the customers can request meter data and they can get the usage consumption details. So in order to provide these details, retailers, on other hand, such as Energy Australia, AGL, or any other AMO hub providers, they have implemented a 5-minute or the half-an-hour meter reading application where it receives all the meter transactions every 5 minutes from all the units by region. So what this metadata does is it has a simple payload, but however, the challenges that these organizations is now experiencing is they are getting a massive amount of meter data every 5 minutes, which they need to process and give it back to customers. So that's where the EDA framework comes into picture, where we will be developing Async APIs using MuleSoft, and we will push all the metadata to Kafka. And then we will store it in Snowflake. for analysis such as adjusting meter readings and do some calculations so that we can provide energy consumption details back to customers. So in this demo, I will discuss how we can design Async API using MuleSoft within the Anypoint platform. And then I'll also explain different MuleSoft connectors that we can use to integrate different applications like Kafka and Snowflake. So what is Async API? It is an open source tool which allows users or developers to design and implement asynchronous API specification. So we can use MuleSoft to develop event-driven APIs within our application using the Async API spec in API Designer, where we can edit, document, and publish this spec so that we can share it with partners for assessment. Let me show you how we can do that. So in this Anypoint platform, there is an option where we can create Async API. So this is the feature that MuleSoft provides. And I have already created an event-driven Async API for this demo. So let me show you. So what this Async API does is it makes our task much easier, that it allows us to develop event-driven API in such a way that it separates the API into 3 different layers. So let me show you what are those. So one of them is the component. This component, it acts as an reusable building block where we can describe the event or the message structure, like how the payload should look like. So in payload, we can include the account number, NMI, or any other device number details. So in this way, we can describe our event structure. And the next one is the servers. So in this server section, we can describe different brokers like Kafka, RabbitMQ, or Solace. But for this demo, I have just added Kafka, but you can add as many as you want. And the last is channels. So it contains 2 types of operations, which is performed by client. One is publish, which allows the producer application to send messages to the channel. And the next is the subscribe. So using subscribe, the consumer application can easily subscribe to the channel and can consume the message. So in this channel, we can use a message tag or components, which I have mentioned earlier, so that we can describe how the event payload should look like and what information should be included within that event. So this is all about Async API. So now let's discuss how we can integrate Kafka using MuleSoft. Kafka, it is commonly considered as world's leading streaming platform because it decouples the data stream and systems by allowing the source system to push or store metadata within the Kafka topic, while on other side, the target system can consume this data and process it based on our requirement. So in this way, this method, it provides an outstanding performance, that the latency to exchange data from one system to other system is usually less than 10 milliseconds. So in order to connect to Kafka, we just need to provide the minimal Bootstrap server properties. So let me show you. So I have just provided the URL. This is the URL I have used to integrate with Kafka using MuleSoft application. So we can just provide these details and can integrate it. Some of the operations that Kafka supports and offers us is batch message listener, which allows us to consume a list of messages from the Kafka cluster, and then we can process it within our flow using MuleSoft. And the next is commit, which offers which offsets a batch of messages that have been consumed by a message listener. On the other hand, the message listener, it allows us to consume a single message from a particular topic, and then we can push it to another system or do some processing kind of thing. And the next is the consume operation. It allows us to consume one or more messages from a topic, and then we can use a publish operation where we can publish a particular message to a particular topic. And then we can specify those partitions based on our requirement. And the last is seek, which sets the customer's current offset for the topic and partition to the offset value. So let me show you how we can do that using MuleSoft application. So why we are using MuleSoft is here we can find different connectors where we can easily integrate with different applications. So that's why I'm using MuleSoft. So after designing the Async API, we can embed that API specification within this project and start implementing the flows. So I've created a metadata publish flow so that I can publish all that metadata to a Kafka topic, and then another flow to subscribe those topics and store it in Snowflake. So in this metadata publish flow, the file reader, it acts as an event producer where it reads all the metadata records and then it pushes it to Kafka. And I've also used a batch job so that I can stream a large volume of data into smaller chunks and can process it very quickly. So what is Snowflake? Snowflake, it is a data warehouse which allows organization to load or store large volume of data. So after storing the information in Snowflake, we can do some analysis or calculations based on our requirement, and we can provide these energy consumption, price details, or any other details that customer wants. So let me run this application. Yeah, it's already done. This is the file which contains all the metadata records. So it contains account number, device type, NMI, and all these details will be sending it to Kafka. So what is happening in the background is this file reader, it reads all the records which is present in that file, and then it will slowly push it to the Kafka. So let me show you where it has been pushed. I've created a topic using Confluent Kafka Cloud. So you can use Kafka on-premise as well. Just give me a second. It's ready. So yeah, this is the metadata topic that I have created in Kafka. So what this topic does is like we can have multiple producers that we can write events to it, as well as we can have multiple consumers that can read and process this metadata. So all the data, metadata which has come to this topic has already been consumed because I have both flows in the same application, but we can have a publish flow in one application and subscribe in other as per our requirement. So what happened is all this data have been already pushed to the Snowflake. So in Snowflake, I have created a table called market metadata. So this table, it contains all the metadata information on a daily basis because we'll be pushing it to this table and do all the analysis. So Snowflake, it provides a feature called streaming. So this streaming objects, what it does is like it captures all the changes that we are making within a table. So it captures actions like inserting or updating or deleting a record within the table. So I've just created a metadata stream for that particular market metadata so that I can see how many records have been inserted. So let me just run this command so that we can see how many records have inserted. So it got all the information that the file has contained. So now what we can do is we can do analysis. So for outbound purpose, I have just created a simple REST API. If a customer demands saying like, I want a usage price for a particular day or for 1 month, they can just invoke this API and can go get those details. So let me just show it in Postman. So he can just provide the account number, start date, end date, and he can get the usage price. So this was the usage price that we have got. But if he wants to get like for 1 month, we can just provide the start and end details and can get it for 1 month. So yeah, this is all about it. And yeah, thank you.
Monica, I think that there is a question in the chat. It says, is there a way to see number of consumers and subscribers to Kafka Q topics?
Yes, we can see that in Kafka itself, like how many consumers we want. And while creating a topic itself, we can provide the configuration details, like how many consumers we want. And we can see that. Let me show you. So here I have one, not this one. Yeah, you can have consumer details here, like how many consumers we have and who are all consuming that particular topic.
Thanks, Monica. Is there any other question? This is a very, very cool demo of how easily we can coexist async APIs with REST APIs, and reuse existing systems APIs to quickly extend the value of the solutions.
Yeah, and also from a product perspective is that we're rolling out quite a few connectors now in that space, in the data integration space. So Snowflake is one that we rolled out a few months ago, I think, and of course there's sort of more coming in that space. So data integration, async API space is definitely something we're investing in. There's a question from Warren. Is the async API spec used in the source code or more for documenting an event interface?
I mean, for now, it's more of a documentation, like we're using it only to publish and test it. But yeah, later on, we can also implement, generate flows from those specifications.
Yeah, and from a product perspective, I suppose that is going to be, the real stage where we are treating REST APIs and async APIs exactly the same. We are scaffolding, providing policy enforcement and everything on whether it is REST or async API.
Cool. Right. Any other questions from anyone on this presentation and demo? No? Good. I think we're good to go. If you have any other questions, you can always put them in the chat and we can answer them in the chat. But I really want to thank the CAP team, Monica, Carlos, and Nick for this really insightful presentation and demo. Worked really well. And again, the electricity use case was very topical as well, I would say. So again, a big thank you from our end. Awesome. All right. Then let's hand over to the Copado team, who will be talking about their Copado DevOps product and how to manage multi-cloud, MuleSoft, and Salesforce deployment pipelines. Over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Daniel. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for having us along. So Paul Robinson, I'm Alliance Director here for Copado, based in the sunny part of Australia, so Sydney. So nice and sunny here at the moment, so apologies for that. And I've got Stephen Wong with me, who's our solution engineer. I'll kick off and then we'll jump in for Stephen. We'll start off with just a couple of slides because I appreciate Copado might be a new name to a few of you. Stephen, are you able to share the deck, or do you want me to?
Sorry. You guys looking at the screen? Yeah. Okay.
So Copado is a business. It was founded in 2013. So for those who are good at maths, 8 years old, and actually founded in Madrid in Spain. So for the Spanish speaking amongst us, Copado means cool. So mostly focused on that time on the Salesforce ecosystem, focused on integrated platform covering DevOps, agile planning, continuous delivery, compliance, version control, testing, and analytics. Do you want to jump to the next slide, Stephen? So Copado, 100% native on the Salesforce platform, so therefore inherits the security from that, full ISO, HIPAA, GDPR compliance, and has been supporting various solutions on the platform. So you can see we started 8 years ago in release management and supporting Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, the core Salesforce platform. And after that, including industry clouds, Encino, Viva, and other applications built on that. And also out of the box, Copado offers more than 24 integrations with tools like GitHub, Jira, and Jenkins to really sort of allow the full ecosystem experience. But you can see we've had quite a lot of funding invested in us from the likes of Insight Ventures and Salesforce Ventures. And that's led us to have the money to push to support additional clouds. Obviously, this year we went multi-cloud, and we wouldn't be with you today if one of those clouds wasn't MuleSoft. So we've added functionality for MuleSoft this year, and that's obviously what we're going to be showing you in the presentation today. We're also continuing to invest big ambitions for growth, 100% year-over-year growth for Copado at the moment. So there's going to be future support for things like Slack, Marketing Cloud, Commerce Cloud, and pushing into the ERP space, for example, for SAP. So we jump to the next slide. I can very quick overview of the I guess the problem statement we're solving for. And that's only 10% of CIOs are saying they're very successful at rapid software development. This go live gap typically is about 100 days from people having an idea of what they want to get live with to actually having that functionality in the hands of users. And there's a whole range of things which hold that up. It could be siloed technologies, siloed processes, siloed teams, no version control, broken processes, Salesforce Word out of sync sandboxes, etc. So I'm sure for those who've been in the industry for a while, those are all problems we can relate to. And those are essentially the problems that Copado looks to solve for, to drive that release velocity and speed to value for customers. So I'm going to hand over to Stephen to get into a bit more of the technical side of things.
So thanks for that, Paul. And hi, everyone. So I'm Stephen Wong, sales engineer for Copado, based out of Sydney as well. So taking on from Paul, I guess, what does Copado do, right? So Copado is doing with DevOps what Salesforce is doing with application development. So I'm not sure if the team here is familiar with Salesforce, but what Salesforce has done is Salesforce has enabled non-technical citizen developers to start developing business applications much quicker. And what Copado is doing is enabling DevOps for both the technical and non-technical teams. As we know, DevOps has historically been something that is very technical. But what Copado is doing is enabling DevOps for both technical and non-technical teams. And how does Copado do this? Copado do it in a few powerful ways. So firstly, Copado allows both technical and non-technical teams to leverage the power of version control, Git, without having to deal with the technicalities of Git. Don't have to think about branching strategies. You don't have to think about running CLI commands like Git commit and Git push and Git branch and all those commands. Secondly, Copado encourages the behavior of delivering very small changes, but delivering them much more frequently through what we call our user story-centric model. And in Copado, a user story is essentially the container of software changes that is deployed across the pipeline. Thirdly, Copado embeds the concept of quality gates into the pipeline, therefore preventing user stories from being deployed unless they are of sufficient levels of quality. Fourthly, definitely being a DevOps platform, CI/CD automation is completely handled by Copado, as you'll see in the demo. And last but not least, with the entire team working on top of Copado, Copado now is your one single platform that will provide real-time visibility and traceability, from requirements to implementation and deployment of the changes. And Copado has done this, very, very successfully with the Salesforce teams, as Paul has shown, because Copado is a solution that is built on top of Salesforce for Salesforce users. But as Paul mentioned earlier, Copado is now extending our platform to multi-cloud, and our vision is that Copado will become the DevOps platform for all cloud-based applications. And MuleSoft is one of the first non-Salesforce clouds that we support today. So how does Copado help with DevOps for MuleSoft? Our customers are mostly Salesforce customers, but they also have MuleSoft. So what we do is we go out there, we talk to them, and we find out what their issues are. And what we've heard is that in MuleSoft, the challenge that MuleSoft users face is a little bit different from what our Salesforce users face. And you guys being on the Salesforce side, correct me if I'm wrong. Feedback to me if we got it right or wrong, right? So the issue with Salesforce is that we have a mix of both technical and non-technical developers. But with MuleSoft, we don't see that problem at all. MuleSoft developers are already highly technical, and they have no issues doing CLI, running Git commands. So that's not an issue. But however, what we see is release managers, they do have a few challenges. Firstly, the release managers, they need greater visibility. Today, a lot of the information they tell us, sits across many different tools, from ALM tools like Jira to Excel sheets that they use to plan their releases and things like that. Secondly, release managers are less technical, and they need to be able to deploy APIs forward into the higher environments. But they don't know how to deal with Git. They don't know how to deal with CLIs. They don't know how to deal with CI/CD tools. So what we've heard is typically what happens is the release managers will have to rely on the developers to actually help them promote these changes. And what this is doing is taking the developers away from their core job, which is to build great APIs like the ones that Monica was just showing us. And what we've also heard is that while developers in the MuleSoft side are skilled enough to set up and maintain the CI/CD pipeline, the Jenkins scripts or the GitLab scripts or whatever scripts you have to power that CI/CD pipeline, once again, this is not their job, right? Setting up and maintaining the CI/CD pipeline is really additional work that kind of like takes developers away from their core duties. So with what we've heard, so this is how we think Copado can help. And firstly, the Copado platform can bridge the technical divide, for MuleSoft teams, just like we have done it for Salesforce teams. But in this case, the platform will focus on minimizing disruption to developers, allowing developers to work within, the tools of their choice, the CLI commands and things like that. They can still do that. But what we want to do is provide release managers in the MuleSoft space to with what they need, which is really visibility into dependencies, into the readiness of the changes. And we want to make it really easy for the release managers to deploy these changes, to take on these changes from the developers and deploy them into the higher environments. So if we look at this, end-to-end DevOps best practice that we see very commonly in the MuleSoft world, where on the left-hand side is where development happens, and on the right-hand side is where the APIs run. Without Copado, you will be dealing with many, many different tools to manage and operate this. And where Copado can help is we can streamline all of these to the point where when developers are ready with their changes, Copado can help take this completed work and deploy them across the entire pipeline into production in an automated fashion, and give release managers that capability to do so. Okay, so enough talk. So let's jump into the Copado platform and see how this actually works. So I'll first show you the control center screen in Copado, what we call the pipeline manager. So as you can see here, Copado gives a very graphical way of visualizing the end-to-end DevOps pipeline. And in this case, you're looking at a Salesforce pipeline. Now, in the case of a Salesforce pipeline, because in Salesforce world, all development is done on the cloud. So developers don't have their own PCs and build. I mean, they have their own PCs, but they don't do the development locally. They do it on the sandbox that sits in the cloud. So all the coding is done here. So in this case, Copado essentially helps manage the development sandboxes, take those changes, promote it to the SIT environment, the UAT environment, and finally to the production environment. So this is the pipeline that we can create for and manage for Salesforce. Now with our move into multi-cloud, so now Copado can effectively support multiple pipelines. Yeah, so we can support Salesforce pipeline, MuleSoft pipeline, multiple MuleSoft pipelines. So if you have MuleSoft pipeline for your process APIs, your experience APIs, you can have multiple pipelines to manage that as well. So once I switch into the MuleSoft pipeline, you will see that the pipeline looks similar, but yet it's a little bit different, right? Because we are talking about different use case here. So the first thing you see that is different is that on the left-hand side, you'll notice that we don't have multiple development sandboxes to manage. What we do have is something like an outbox for developers who have finished their APIs and now are ready for them to just put their change here so that the release managers can then take them and delete and move them forward in the pipeline. Okay. And on the right-hand side here, I have 3 boxes: an integration, a staging, and a production. And each of these are mapped to, my runtime, my environment that's running on my Anypoint platform. So you can see I'm looking at my production sandbox here, but I also have an integration and staging sandbox here. All right. So each of those boxes effectively map to each of these environments here on Anypoint platform. All right. So coming back to the pipeline manager. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put on the hat of Bob, the release manager, right? And Bob is not a technical person, but he works with all these cool MuleSoft developers who develop great APIs, and he needs to take these changes forward. So how would Bob actually do this? So Bob will come to the pipeline here. He will actually look at, there are 2 changes that's sitting in staging that I need to deploy into production. And what Bob will do is click on that 2, and effectively Copado will show him what those 2 changes are. So as I mentioned earlier, in Copado, changes are contained in user stories. You can deploy them at one go. So for example, I can check all these boxes of all these user stories, and I just click a button and we can deploy this. But obviously Bob is not so trusting, right? So he's like saying, okay, I have all these changes that I need to deploy, but hey, I need visibility. I need to know what's going on. So he clicks on this user story. Then Copado starts giving Bob a little bit more visibility into this change. And in the user story screen, you can see, Bob can see now that, hey, the change has gone through came from the developers. It has been tested in SIT. It's now sitting in UAT. It's waiting to go into production. So in one glance, Bob gets to know where this change is. And then he gets to see, the information about this user story. And Copado has bi-directional integration with Jira, with Azure DevOps, with Rally, and all these ALM tools, so that if, project managers want to use Jira to, create user stories, those user stories can come from Jira, and we can pull in the information here. And once the change is deployed across the pipeline, Copado can automatically update this status, and these statuses can feed back into Jira. Now, what Bob wants to know is this: is this user story, is it dependent on something else? Like if this is a experience API, does it depend on the process API, right? That's going to be deployed in another user story, or does it depend on another Salesforce application that has some changes, that needs to go forward before he can deploy this change forward? So on the right-hand side here, Bob can immediately see that, yep, there are 2 user stories that this change is dependent upon, and I can see who are the owner, and I can see what are the status. So in this case, he can see very clearly that user story 3, it's already completed, it's already in production, which means Bob can actually deploy this forward into production without any issues. Number 2, Copado is integrated with a lot of automated testing tools. We have our own called Copado robotic testing, but we can also integrate with other testing tools. And we can create definitions of done in Copado. And you can see here, I only have one, but I can create multiple definitions of done. And these can effectively, kick off tests. And once the test comes back, we can, effectively come back with the status. So in one glance, Bob can now, Bob knows, the status and the dependencies and all those information. Now, if Bob wants to, if he's a bit busybody and he wants to know, hey, what was changed? He could click on that link there. He doesn't need to know Git, but he can come into Git and actually see side by side who has changed what. And in this case, it's simple change. We change a path, we change some payload. Yeah, so Bob can do that as well. And also in Copado, you now have an inventory of all the changes, all the commits. So if we change like 5 different flow XML files or something like that, you'll see the commit, all the files here as well. So Bob is ready, and Bob says, "Yep, I'm happy to deploy this." So Bob comes here, and Bob's just essentially checks this promote and deploy box, and he clicks save. And what this will do is Copado will go behind the scenes, check out the code, build the package, and deploy it into that target environment here. So you can see I'm looking at my productions box here. It doesn't, the status is undeployed. I deployed something this morning, I undeployed it. But as Copado finishes the job, Copado will deploy that change into here. Okay. Now let's switch hats. So I was Bob. Now I'm I'm Steven again, and I'm the MuleSoft developer. How would I deal with Copado? So as I mentioned, Copado's vision is not to change the way developers work. We want to make it easy. So let me just switch my screen here. I know developers work locally, so maybe you're using VS Code or you're using Anypoint Studio. I open both here. My VS Code is pointed to my my folder that contains the change here. And the first thing I would do is run some commands. So Copado gives some commands to developers to be to run off the CLI. And the first command here is Copado work list. And what this will do is we'll bring down a list from Copado where all the user stories that's assigned to me, right? And what are the statuses. So I see that one is approved. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to work on that user story. So I'm just going to put and 13, right? So that's the user story number there. So I'm going to say, yep, I'm going to work on this user story now. Now, what Copado is doing here, Copado is now creating, creating a link between what I'm doing and and the user story in Copado, and it's also created a feature branch for me in the Git repository, right? So with Copado, I don't need to deal with branching strategies. Copado will handle that for me, and we use the most popular Git flow branching strategy. Okay, so now I've switched my feature here. I'm going to make my change using Anypoint Studio, right? So for example, I just come in here. I just say, hey, I have a listener here. I'm going to come in, maybe change this to what was the user story? Let's say use story 13 or something. I change the listener path. I come in here. This is obviously a very complicated API here. Much more complicated than the one Monica showed you. And it says hello there, MuleSoft Meetup. Yeah. Amazing, very difficult API here. And now I come back here, and then I'm done. Yeah, that's so I've spent days building this. So what I want to do now is commit the code, right? And if I come in here, you can see that I have a change here in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stage this change, and then I'm going to commit it. Yeah, so user story 13. Yeah, and I'm going to commit it. Okay, so I've committed it to my local repo. But what I don't do is I don't push it into the repo directly. So I will push it to Copado instead. And what Copado will do is behind the scenes, Copado will join and connect all the dots together. Okay. And I'm going to push this change there. And Copado is, doing some work here. And once I'm done, right, I need to tell my release manager that I am ready, right? And I can just do an open. And what this will do is Copado will open up a browser and bring me directly into the user story that I was working on. Okay, so sorry, I think I wasted too long there. Okay, so I come into my user story here, and now I can see in my user story, the commit, the build, the file that I just added a few minutes ago. So we just committed this here, and then I can click on this feature, and it will bring me actually to the Git repository again, as I mentioned earlier. And you can see this is the change that I did. So this is how the developer would work on Copado. Yeah, so build your API in your local environment. You just need to run a few commands differently, and that's it. And from there, what I'll do is, as a developer, let's just say I've done my testing and everything. I want to mark this ready for the release manager to take this forward. I go into the deliver tab here. I check this box and say I'm ready. Yeah, my work is done, and I save this. Okay, and when I do that, essentially what will happen is if I come back to the pipeline manager here, let me just refresh the page, and you would see that in the pipeline manager, earlier that outbox we had 0 change here, yeah, and now you can see that I have 1. All right, if I click on that 1. I can now see this is user story 13, the work that I've done. It's now approved, and now it's ready for to move forward. And this is where Bob can come in and do what I just showed you earlier. All right, so let's go back to the pipeline manager and see if my deployment is finished. Yeah, so you can see now earlier this was undeployed, and you can see Copado just did a deployment just minutes ago. And if I were to go back to that user story that I deployed, and you can see now, instead of it sitting in staging, it's now finally made its way into production. Okay, so think about it a little bit. Without Copado, how you would actually do this, right? So
I think we lost him now.
The power outputs were supposed to be in Melbourne, not in Sydney.
Okay. All right, let's just wait a minute for him to get back. Maybe let's look at the question. So thanks, Paul, for answering Julian's question around the Salesforce licenses. I had a question around the different deployment models. Obviously, you can deploy MuleSoft on-prem, sort of on a server or VM. You can run it on RTF in a hybrid model or Cloud Hub. I assume, and just seeing the demo now that Stephen gave, I assume you support all these different deployment models.
We do. I'll let Stephen add some color to the answer, but yes, we do. You just need obviously a MuleSoft account that you log in and you install Copado to interface with that. And yeah, just to add to my answer on Julian, obviously, if someone has both Salesforce and MuleSoft, there's additional power to having Copado, but you don't need to be a current Salesforce customer to leverage Copado for MuleSoft, but you would need to stand up an org to obviously install Copado on.
All right, cool. That's good.
Let me just ping Stephen to find out
for a moment whether he's see
where he's got to.
I mean, he got pretty far with his demo. That was quite impressive. At least he finished the pipeline, which was good. But yeah, I'm sure he had something else to add, maybe. Any other questions from anyone about Copado for the Copado team? I mean, it really looks like a super interesting and pretty powerful product, and it runs on Salesforce as well. So that's certainly helpful as well.
Tim's got a question. If Copado CLI commands fail for some reason, are we able to check the error logs? Yeah, absolutely. Obviously Copado being after Stephen's coming back, being an installed package on Salesforce, you've got all the access to Salesforce reporting, including things like error logs. Stephen, welcome back.
Let me just check. Maybe I need to make him host. No, it's got presenter
Sorry,
rights.
Sorry, guys. I
No
didn't know
problem
where
at all.
when I dropped off. I was looking at my demo screen.
No problem at all. We got you back. I mean, in the meantime, we answered a few of the questions. So head over to you again to get us onto the finish line.
So I'm not sure where I ended, but yeah, I hope you saw the entire demo. I just wanted to summarize that we make DevOps accessible. We bridge the gap between technical and non-technical, as well as multi-cloud deployments. Driving really an orchestrated multi-pipeline deployment strategy. I didn't get to show you, what happens underneath the hood, but essentially we have a really good capability that can extend the platform further. And really, our vision is to have one single DevOps platform for all cloud-based applications, whether that's SaaS-based or PaaS-based. Yeah. So, Paul, do you want to continue?
So before we do, I was in the process of answering Tim's question, Stephen, about if Copado CLI commands fail for some reason. Do you want to talk about the error logs and how they can access those?
Yeah, certainly. So if we have logs at the CLI level, so the SFDX command that you run, we can have logs there. We also have logs that actually we capture on the platform as well. So yeah, no problems with that.
Perfect. So do you want to jump to the next slide, Stephen?
Yep, sure.
What we really want to show as well is, should you be exploring Copado if you like the look of what it is? We've got a very robust partner program designed to help people make the best of Copado. So you kind of, if you go down the route, you're not on your own. We've got an active community of over 40,000 developers certified on Copado globally. So it's a lot of people investing in Copado. We offer workshops, webinars, in-depth Copado content to drive awareness. We also have a sort of an online academy, playgrounds, places you can get in and play with Copado, and also certifications, so that you can really demonstrate your expertise on the Copado platform. And if we flick to the next slide, Stephen, for anyone who does dive into Copado on the back of this meetup today, we're happy to give a free fundamentals certification voucher for anyone who was on the meetup. So just reach out to me and I'll hook you up. As I say, we've got robust learning solutions. If you go onto Trailhead on Salesforce, there's trails about Copado, but we have our own success camp where you're able to interact with people around the globe who are working Copado and driving outcomes for their customers. So that's pretty much what we've got from today. I think we've got a little time for a few questions. So if anyone's got anything else, then feel free to fire them in. If not, feel free to follow up with me or Stephen directly. I'll drop both our emails and LinkedIn's into the chat shortly.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Paul. That was a really, really good presentation as well and a good demo. And hopefully it was useful to everyone in the meetup to learn a bit about Copado and the Copado tooling. Thank you.
We just did one quick question come up on, which was curious to know what mass back promote pipeline under Salesforce pipeline does.
Yeah, happy to answer that. So one of the biggest problems or issues facing Salesforce developers is because, as I mentioned, developers have to build on the cloud. So you have to spin up sandboxes on the cloud for each developer. And as developers work on their individual sandboxes and deploy changes, you can imagine those sandboxes goes out of sync. So one of the best features of Copado is the ability for us to promote changes backward. So if Dev 1 makes a change, promotes it forward, that change that I promoted forward, I can promote it backward into Dev 2 sandbox and Dev 3 sandbox. So if you have like 10 sandboxes or 10 developers, we can do mass back promote to all 10, all the other 9 sandboxes, if that makes sense, Nitin. Yeah, Nitin, does that answer the question?
Yeah, I don't think we can hear him, obviously. So,
oh, okay.
it sounded great to me, Stephen. So, yeah.
Okay.
That's good. If there's any questions, just paste them in the chat, and we get the Copado team to answer them. All right, cool. Thank you very much. That was good. Super insightful. All right, now it's a bit of fun time here. As always, the last 20 minutes we do Kahoot. There are prizes to be won. So as mentioned before, we got this time from MuleSoft, we got first prize a training voucher, second prize is a hoodie, and third prize is a t-shirt. And as mentioned, the Copado team is throwing in a couple of prizes as well. So again, thanks for that. So the best way is to open kahoot.it on your mobile phone browser or use the app. I will sort of share the questions here on the screen, so you can have a look on the screen and answer the questions pretty much on your phone or on a separate window in your browser. I will give you a game pin in a minute. And if you want to win prizes, use your real name, please. Otherwise, it's difficult to align the winners with the persons. All right, let's get started. And please go onto kahoot.it or the Kahoot app and enter the game pin, which is 8739963. So today, as always, we have 12 questions. There are questions, a couple of questions on Copado, so hope everyone was listening well, and a couple of questions on Async APIs. The answers were revealed in the Capgemini presentation. And there's a couple of non-Mule related questions as well. And this time it's all about traveling and traveling the world, which hopefully we'll all be able to do at some point again. So I hope you have at least traveled the world in the past, so then you can answer those questions as well. Right, let's wait a few more minutes. We've got 14 people today. Anyone else wants to join the game? I'll wait a bit more because we still have 30 attendees in a meetup. So you don't have to attend if you don't want to, that's fine. But I'll give another minute or so. If you want to download the Kahoot app, or easiest is just to type kahoot.it into your mobile phone's web browser and then enter the game pin. All right. Think 15, that's what we have today. That's all right. Let's get started. So the first one, that's just a test for those of you who are new to Kahoot. So there's no points for that. This is how it works. You've got 20 seconds. You have to answer the right question or get the answer right, but also the speed plays a role, right? This doesn't count yet. It's just for the newbies in the meetup who maybe haven't done it before to get used to it. All right, cool. So I think we're all cool with that. Now it's for real. And first question that counts. What is the name of the upcoming MuleSoft event that will showcase new product announcements? That was quick. MuleSoft Transform. So that's exactly in a week's time, on the 9th. Sign up for that. You will not regret it. It's super interesting. We're really rolling out some really good new technologies out next year. All right. And we've got Jay-Z leading the charge. Second question. Where is supposedly the best place to see the Northern Lights? Right, that is actually in Norway, all the way up in Northern Europe. Best place to see the Northern Lights. Many of you got that one right. And Diraj is leading the charge with 1,871 points. Next question. How long does it typically take to make a decision for a preventive predictive scenario? That is a question from the Capgemini presentation. Yeah, less than a second. That is sort of the typical time frame, not too much. Jay-Z is leading again. Next question also for Capgemini. What was the single most important aspect that made microservices explode dramatically in the world? Couple of technologies on there. Yeah, not async either, right? Microservices already appeared before, pretty much before the async APIs. It's actually REST APIs.
I thought it was the green one, Daniel, to be honest. But anyway.
Yeah, that's wishful thinking, maybe. Well, two of those get it right. That's probably the muleys in the room, right? A good point, though, Adam. Jay-Z, wow. Pretty good. And the last question on the Capgemini presentation. Mention a benefit of event-driven async APIs. It's a tricky one. Oh, all right. Only 4 of you got that one right. Policy enforcement and discoverability is one of those benefits. Okay, interesting. Tough questions today. And we still have Jay-Z leading. Right, another question now from the world of travel. Tokyo Tower has what 2 colors? So choose 2 colors from the ones that you see on here. Tokyo Tower has what 2 colors? Those of you who've traveled to Japan in the past could know that. Right, it's orange and white. So 3 of you got orange right, 9 of you got white right. Okay. All right, we've got a bit of movement, but still JC is leading. These are tough questions today. Copado is built on what platform? That should be easy. It was mentioned a few times. Yeah, everyone got that right. Salesforce. All right, Jay-Z is still leading. Well, we've got a couple of contenders coming up there. What percentage of CIOs say they are very successful at rapid software deployment? Only 10%, right? 5 of you got that one right. That's not many. Okay, and Jay-Z still leading, and a couple of others close up. What isn't a benefit of Copado for MuleSoft? So what is not a benefit? Take some time to read. Right, most of you got that right. So quickly and easily build flows to integrate systems and data. That is not a benefit for Copado, but definitely a benefit for MuleSoft, as we all know. But the rest allow developers to work in their tools of choice and with the CLI, provide release managers with visibility into change dependencies, and allow release managers to deploy changes into higher environment. We saw that in the demo pretty well. All right, I think we've got one more question to go. Jay-Z, wow, I think that's going to be tough to get him here. Last question, travel. Located in Hawaii, Mauna Loa is famous for being the largest of this type of landform. Mauna Loa, what is it? An island, an archipelago, a volcano, or a peninsula? It is a volcano, right? Anyone who's traveled to Hawaii will know there's a couple of very interesting volcanoes there. And that's it for today. We have on third place Kanishka. We have on second place Daniel Lee. And number one, we've got Jay-Z. Well, congratulations to the winners. You will get prizes being sent out from us. You'll get an email. And yeah, I will, I think that just leaves me now to thank everyone. Also really thank everyone for this year. We always had super good presence here of people at the MuleSoft Meetup. Thanks for your support. It's really much appreciated. Really looking forward to seeing all of you next year as well, 22. We're planning to run a meetup pretty much every quarter as well. Again, hopefully we'll do it again in person. And for now, have a great end of the year and a good jump into 2022 as well. Hope it's going to be a good year. All right. Thanks, everyone. See you around.
Everybody.
See you at the next meetup. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.